Bay of Bengal. Introduction. The Bay of Bengal is one of the most important maritime spaces in the world, not merely because of its size, but because of the concentration of geography, history, economy, ecology, religion, strategy, and human vulnerability that converges within it. Situated in the northeastern part of the Indian Ocean, the Bay of Bengal forms a vast marine arena between the Indian subcontinent and the Southeast Asia. It is not an empty body of water. It is a living system shaped by rivers, monsoon, tectonic violence, deltas, ports, fisheries, religious imagination, imperial trade, naval competition, and environmental decline. It is simultaneously a physical basin, a civilizational corridor, a geostrategic hinge, and a zone of recurring natural catastrophe. Geographical identity and spatial position. Geographically, the Bay of Bengal occupies the northeastern extension of the Indian Ocean, lies at the intersection of South Asia and Southeast Asia. Its broad shape opens towards the south, while its northern rim narrows towards the coast of Bangladesh and eastern India. It is bounded by mainland India to the west and northwest and Bangladesh to the north. Myanmar to the northeast, Andaman and Nicobar Islands to the east, and at its southern approaches by Sri Lanka and the northwestern edge of Sumatra. This location gives the Bay of Bengal an unusual geopolitical character. It is not simply coastal waters for one state, it is a shared maritime arena connecting multiple states, multiple civilizations, and multiple trade systems. Scale, form, and basic dimensions. The physical scale of the Bay of Bengal is immense. Covering roughly 2.6 square kilometers, it is the largest bay in the world by area. Its maximum length extends for about 2090 kilometers and its maximum width reaches approximately 1610 kilometers. These dimensions matter because they count currents. These dimensions matter because they shape currents, cyclone formation, fisheries, shipping routes, and the scale of maritime ecosystems. The bay is large enough to function like a major oceanic subregion, yet enclosed enough to create distinctive environmental and climatic behavior. Its average depth is around 2,600 meters, while its deepest point descends to roughly 4,694 meters. This combination of expansive surface area and substantial depth makes it both a major maritime highway and a significant oceanographic basin. The meaning of the name. The name Bay of Bengal reflects the historical centrality of the Bengal region, especially the territories associated with present-day Bangladesh and the adjoining regions of eastern India. The naming is not trivial. It records the fact that the northern arc of this bay has long been shaped by Bengal's waters, ports, peoples, rivers, and political histories. Ancient and classical civilization knew the bay by other names, including terms that linked it to the Ganges or to the Vanga region. This demonstrates that from antiquity onward the bay was considered and recognized as an extension of the great riverine and coastal world of eastern India and Bengal. A maritime space is often named by the civilization that most powerfully imprints itself on it, and Bengal did precisely that. Historical names and civilizational memory. Across different periods and linguistic traditions, the Bay of Bengal acquired several names, each revealing a historical layer of power, trade, or cultural geography. Ancient Indian references associated it with terms like Mahodadhi, emphasizing its sacred and grand oceanic character. In classical Greco-Roman geography, it appeared as the Gulf of the Ganges, highlighting the centrality of the Ganges system to foreign understanding of the region. In the coastal regions of eastern India, especially the ancient kingdom of Kalinga was identified with Kalinga itself. In Tamil literature and in imperial Chola dynasty, it was associated with Vanga or with Chola naval power. These multiple names show that the bay has never been politically or culturally neutral. It has always been contested in language, memory, and strategic identity. Historical roles as a maritime corridor. Historically, the Bay of Bengal functioned as a connective maritime corridor linking eastern India, Bengal, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, and beyond. It was part of a larger trading network that connected the Indian Ocean with Arabia East Africa, and later Europe. Traders, pilgrims, conquerors, missionaries, pirates, and imperial companies moved through this sea. Far from being isolated regional water, the bay formed an arterial route through which ideas, religions, commodities, and technologies traveled. It served as a mechanism of civilizational exchange. Maritime Southeast Asia, Eastern India, and Bengal were not disconnected worlds. The bay made them participants in the same strategic and commercial theater. Ancient kingdoms and the maritime frontier. Ancient and medieval kingdoms along the bay's coast understood the importance of maritime access. The kingdom of Kalinga, the Cholas, the Mauryas, or other regional states engaged with the sea not as a boundary but as a field of extension. The Chola Empire in particular exemplified how the Bay of Bengal could be transformed into an imperial space. Under Rajaraja Chola I and Rajendra Chola I, naval power projected across the bay, turning maritime geography into imperial infrastructure. This mattered because it demonstrated that command over the bay could generate political influence far beyond immediate coastlines. Maritime control was a form of statecraft, not a peripheral matter. Colonial penetration and commercial reordering. With the rise of European mercantile expansion, the Bay of Bengal was drawn into a new commercial and imperial framework. Portuguese traders and later British and French companies established trading posts and strategic footholds along its coasts. Ports such as Chittagong and Sadga became nodes of colonial commerce. The British East India Company, among other European commercial actors, recognized the bay's value as an access corridor to Bengal's wealth, India's interior, and Southeast Asian markets. Colonial rule did not invent the importance of the bay, but it reorganized it. It converted older regional trade patterns into a more aggressive, extractive, and globally integrated system. Maritime archaeology and the material record of the sea. The Bay of Bengal has preserved within its waters the physical remains of centuries of seafaring, trade, warfare, and disaster. Maritime archaeology in the region offers evidence of shipwrecks, trade goods, anchors, pottery, masts, ingots, and other remnants of human interaction with the sea. Such evidence shows that the bay was not just conceptually important, it was intensely used. The seafloor and submerged coastline stores and the debris of political history, storms, piracy, coral growth, deltaic sediment, and tectonic events have all helped create a layered underwater archive. The bay therefore contains both ecological systems and the historical memory in material form. Shipwreck, naval incidents, and maritime violence. A sea of this scale and commercial importance inevitably accumulated a record of wrecks and conflicts. Ships burned, ran aground, sank in storms, or were destroyed in war. During global conflicts, including the Second World War, the bay became a theater of naval operations. Commercial ships were attacked, warships were sunk, and the region became entangled in wider imperial and military struggles. Later, in South Asian conflicts, the sinking of the Pakistani submarine PNS Ghazi near Vishakhapatnam became one of the most famous maritime episodes associated with the bay. These incidents demonstrated that the Bay of Bengal is not merely a zone of commerce and ecology. It is a zone where political violence has repeatedly entered maritime space. Coastal sacred geography. The Bay of Bengal has been incorporated into religious landscapes, particularly with Hindu traditions. At places such as Puri, the sea is not treated as an inherent nature but as sacred presence. Rituals like Samudra Arti express this relationship clearly. In such traditions, the shoreline becomes a threshold between the human and the divine, and the sea itself participates in religious meanings. Sacred geography matters because it influences pilgrimage, cultural memory, settlement patterns, and the symbolic imagination of coastal societies. The bay is not just an economical the bay is not just economically useful water, it is also spiritually charged water. Historic sites along the coast. The coasts of Bay of Bengal are lined with temples, archaeological sites, colonial prisons, and coastal sanctuaries, and centers of maritime culture. Sites such as the Shore Temple at Mahabalipuram, the Jagannath Temple at Puri, the Sun Temple at Konark, and the Cellular Jail in the Andamans illustrate the civilizational depth of this region. These sites are not random monuments. They reflect how coastlines facing the bay have long been spaces of kingship, devotion, punishment, trade, and cultural production. A coastline facing a major bay becomes a stage on which civilization leaves durable marks. River systems and the making of the bay. The Bay of Bengal cannot be understood apart from the rivers that feed it. It receives the outflow of some of Asia's largest and most sediment-rich river systems, including the Ganges, Brahmaputra, Meghna, Godavari, Krishna, Mahanadi, Kaveri, and others. These rivers do far more than transport water. They carry sediments, nutrients, organic matter, pollutants, and the accumulated geological output of vast continental interiors. The bay is therefore a receiving basin for environmental history of Southeast Asia. Himalayan erosion, monsoon rainfall, floodplain agriculture, upstream damming, and human settlement all ultimately affect the bay because the rivers deliver their consequences into it. The Ganges Brahmaputra Meghna system. The Ganges Brahmaputra Meghna system is the dominant fluvial force shaping the northern Bay of Bengal. These rivers create one of the most sediment-rich deltaic environments on Earth. Their sediment loads feeds the Bengal Delta and contributes to the Bengal submarine fan. The annual transport of sediments from these rivers is staggering, reflecting both the erosion power of the Himalayas and the scale of monsoonal hydrology. The result is a maritime environment continually reshaped by deposition. Coastal advance and retreat, estuaries shift, channels migrate, and offshore geomorphology evolves. In the Bay of Bengal, river input is not a secondary feature, it is one of the most defining structural mechanisms. The Sundarbans and deltaic power. The Sundarbans, located in the delta region of the Ganges Brahmaputra system, represents one of the most iconic ecological formations associated with the Bay of Bengal. As largest mangrove forests in the world, the Sundarbans are both biologically rich and geophysically functional. They help buffer storm surges, support fisheries, host endangered species, trap sediments, and stabilize coastal landforms. They also reveal a deeper truth about the bay. This is a sea whose edge isn't fixed. It is mediated by mud, tide, and root systems, estuarine channels, salinity gradients, and seasonal inundation. The Sundarbans are where rivers, forests, and sea interpenetrate. Sediment, delta growth, and geological construction. Few marine basins are so profoundly shaped by sediments as the Bay of Bengal. The huge quantities of material carried by the great rivers of the subcontinent are deposited in deltas, estuaries, coastal plains, and the deep sea floor. Over geological time, the process has created one of the most extraordinary depositional systems on Earth. The Bengal fan, extending far into the deep Indian Ocean, is the ultimate expression of this process. It records millions of years of erosion from the Himalayas and deposition into the bay. This marks the Bay of Bengal not only a maritime zone but also a geological archive of mountain building, erosion, river transport, and basin evolution. The Bengal fan, the world's largest submarine fan. The Bengal fan is perhaps the most astonishing geological features associated with the bay, stretching thousands of kilometers and reaching immense thickness. It is the largest submarine fan in the world. It was created by sediments eroded from the Himalayas and Tibetan Plateau and transported through the Ganges Brahmaputra Meghna system into the bay, from where turbidity currents carried them into deep marine settings. This fan matters scientifically because it preserves evidence of Himalayan uplift, climatic change, sediment transport dynamics, and long-term basin development. It matters economically because such sedimentary systems may host hydrocarbon resources. It matters conceptually because it demonstrates the enormous power of linked Earth systems. Mountains, rivers, monsoons, and oceans are all tied together in making of this feature. Swatch of no ground and submarine relief. Among the notable underwater features of the bay is the Swatch of no ground, a deep submarine canyon in the northern Bay of Bengal. This feature illustrates that the seafloor is far from flat or uniform. Submarine canyons, abyssal fans, trenches, and slope structures the movement of sediments and influence marine habitats. The presence of such a canyon near a high sediment rich deltaic region shows how rivers feed marine systems can curve, fill, and reorganize submarine topography. These deep features are invisible to most coastal populations, yet they are central to the scientific understanding of the bay. Ports and commercial infrastructure. The bay is lined with major ports that sustain regional and international trade. Indian ports such as Kolkata, Haldia, Paradip, Chennai, Visakhapatnam, and others connect industrial and agricultural hinterlands to global markets. Bangladeshi ports such as Chittagong, Mongla, and Paira are vital to national commerce and strategic planning. Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and other regional actors also depend on bay-oriented port infrastructure. Ports convert the bay into an economic circulatory system. Through them, the bay links inland production to maritime trading routes and overseas demand. Myanmar and the Eastern Bay. Myanmar's coastline and the maritime position on the eastern side of the bay gives it strategic importance, especially in relation to South Asia. South Asia and Chinese regional ambitions. Ports, offshore energy, and coastal infrastructure on Myanmar's shores contribute to the bay's strategic mapping. The Bay of Bengal matters because it sits at the convergence of some of the most consequential forces in the modern world. It is the it is where climate vulnerability, maritime strategy, demographic pressure, ecological degradation, resource politics, and regional integration all collide. Any serious analysis of South Asia and the Eastern Indian Ocean or emerging Indo-Pacific order is incomplete without understanding this bay. It is too large, too economically important, too ecologically sensitive, and too strategically exposed to be treated as a secondary region. Conclusion: the Bay of Bengal is not merely a body of water on the map. It is a dynamic, historical, contemporary system shaped by rivers, monsoons, plates, empire, religion, trade, war, ecological interdependence, and human ambition. It has nourished civilizations and enabled commerce, supported vast populations, and attracted powerful states. It has also delivered cyclones, tsunamis, and environmental degradation and relentless strategic rivalry. To study the Bay of Bengal is to study how land, sea, climate, power, and human vulnerability combine into one immense regional theater. It is one of the clearest examples on earth of how geography becomes destiny only when filtered through history, politics, and human action. Because the Bay of Bengal is shared by multiple countries, many of its problems are transboundary. Fish stocks migrate, plastic waste drips, rivers transport pollutants across borders, and cyclones do not recognize sovereignty. This makes regional cooperation essential. Yet cooperation is difficult because states differ in capacity, priorities, and strategic suspicion. Institutions such as the BIMSTAC and the Bay of Bengal Large Marine Ecosystem Framework represents attempts to address common problems through collective action. Their effectiveness depends on whether states treat the Bay of Bengal as a shared system rather than a fragmented set of national frontiers. Storm surge and the geography of death. What makes cyclone in the Bay of Bengal especially lethal is not merely wind speed. It is a combination of cyclone intensity with funnel-shaped coastlines, shallow coastal shelves, low-lying deltas, tidal effects, and immense population concentration. The storm surge becomes the mechanism of mass casualty. When the sea is driven inland, it overwhelms settlements, destroys crops, contaminates fresh water, and kills on a huge scale. The geography of the northern bay turns meteorological meteor, meteorological events into human catastrophes. The Bay of Bengal is affected by atmospheric pollution, including the so-called Asian brown cloud, a layer of aerosol polluting resulting from industrial emissions, vehicle exhaust, and biomass burning. This phenomenon influences solar radiation, climate behavior, visibility, even the capacity of satellites to monitor ocean conditions accurately. The bay is therefore subject not only to waterborne pollution but also to airborne environmental stress. It receives the byproducts of continental scale pollution systems. Climate change and sea level vulnerability. Climate change intensifies nearly every existing risk in Bay of Bengal. Sea level rise threatens low-lying coastals, especially in Bangladesh and deltaic India. Warmer waters may enhance cyclone intensity. Salinity intrusion affects agriculture and drinking water in coastal areas. Coral reefs and marine species face thermal and chemical stress. Coastal populations already living near the edge of subsistence face even higher insecurity under climate pressure. In the Bay of Bengal, climate change is not a future abstraction, it is an amplifier of present danger. Cyclones and catastrophic exposure. The Bay of Bengal is among the most prone marine regions in the world, and the history of cyclones in this basin is one of the most recurring mass death events, and destruction causing events as well. Warm waters, atmospheric moisture, and favorable meteorological conditions allow severe tropical storms to form and intensify. When they make landfall along low-lying coastals, especially where populations are dense and exposure is high, the results can be catastrophic. The Bhola cyclone of 1970 remains one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. Later cyclones such as Sidr, Nargis, Amphan, and Mocha demonstrates that danger remains consistent. Microplastic and marine contamination. Microplastic contamination has emerged as a major threat in the Bay of Bengal region, especially through waterborne transfer from densely populated and industrial regions. Plastic water fragments, fishing gear, and synthetic debris move across boundaries, affecting marine organisms, sediments, and food chains. The transboundary character of plastic pollution makes unilateral solutions inadequate. A single country cannot solve what multiple rivers, currents, and coastal systems continue to reproduce. The Bay of Bengal illustrates the basic rule of maritime pollution. Once waste enters a shared sea, sovereignty becomes porous. Shrimp aquaculture and ecological trade-offs. The expansion of shrimp aquaculture in coastal regions around the Bay of Bengal has generated export revenue and livelihood opportunities. But it has also produced ecological damage. Mangroves have been cleared, chemicals and antibiotics have entered coastal waters, regimes have shifted, local environmental balance has been distributed. This is a familiar development pattern, short-term commercial gains secured through long-term ecosystem erosion. In the Bay of Bengal, the tension between export-oriented coastal development and ecological preservation is particularly sharp. Naval exercises and security signaling. Naval exercises in the Bay of Bengal include major exercises such as Malabar, severe multiple serve multiple functions. They build interoperability, display partnerships, deter adversaries, and signal strategic intent. The base location makes it well suited for such exercises. These events reveal the control of the sea is not about wartime capabilities, but about peacetime signaling. Exercises are messages. In Bay of Bengal, those messages increasingly concern alignment, balancing, maritime security, and the emerging shape of Indo-Pacific order. Trade corridors and regional integration. The Bay of Bengal is also central to visions of regional integration, especially through frameworks such as BIMSTEC. The bay can serve as connective zone linking South Asia with Southeast Asia through trade, infrastructure, energy exchange, and port connectivity. Such frameworks reflect a recognition that the bay is not only a zone of conflict or disaster but a platform for cooperative development. Whether these visions succeed depends on political will and infrastructure capacity and the ability of states to manage competition without letting it destroy cooperation.